Hello, everybody. This is BeerSmith episode number 108, and it's late July 2015. Michael Dawson from Weisse joins me to discuss sour beers in a show recorded at the National Homebrew show floor. Thank you to this week's sponsor, Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. They're now offering 6 issues a year, up from 4 at a great discount. They're offering a new discount code, which gives you 15% off everything they sell, including subscriptions and training. The new code is BeerSmith 2015. I encourage you to check out this great new magazine for homebrewers at beerandbrewing.com and use the offer code BeerSmith 2015 to get your 15% discount today. And of course, my homebrewing software, BeerSmith Mobile for your iPhone, iPad, Android, or Kindle Fire device. BeerSmith Mobile lets you create and edit recipes on the go, and you can share recipes with BeerSmith Desktop via our cloud site. Check out BeerSmith Mobile on the iTunes, Google Play, or Amazon Kindle app stores today. I apologize for the noise in this week's show. It was recorded on a loud showed floor from the BeerSmith booth at the National Homebrew Conference. And now let's jump into this week's episode. Today on the show, Michael Dawson joins me from Weisse Labs. Michael is a Weisse Labs brand manager, author for Brew Your Own magazine, and former host of Brewing TV. He joins me today for a special episode recorded here on the floor of the National Homebrew Convention 2015 here in San Diego. Michael, how you doing, man?
I'm tired but good. I'm
good.
You're glad to be here.
I notice you're pacing yourself. You're drinking a little water now.
Lesson learned.
Staying hydrated is the key, really.
I've been hitting the water pretty hard today.
Yeah, I'm surprised because you're a veteran here at the National Homebrew Conference. I would think you would know.
Time zone.
Know to pace yourself.
Time zones mess me up.
So, Michael, how are you enjoying this year's conference?
It's great. I have a lot of fond memories from the 2011 show here at the Town and Country, and
I do too,
it's great to be back here. It's a really funky, fun venue.
I think it's cool that they're having everything outside, a lot of it outside
I've really enjoyed that as well.
Yeah.
It's dark, but it's open air, and living in the northern Midwest, you have to seize any opportunity to be outside.
That's right.
You
don't see the outside that much unless it's raining or snowing, right?
Snowy, yeah.
It's
good for cross-country skiing, but not wearing shorts.
Well, topic you picked for today is brewing sour beers.
Yes.
How long have you been brewing sour beers there, Michael?
A couple decades.
Decades.
I'd have to count to give you an accurate number,
When'd you start
like
brewing?
that.
I don't even know.
94.
94.
Yeah,
I started in 87.
Okay.
Just a little before.
You got me.
But I wasn't brewing sour beers then.
Okay. I always found Lambics really compelling. I was just fascinated by. I rather than be put off or intimidated by difficulty and lengthy processes, I get really obsessed with them and fascinated by them. So the multiple year maturation times wasn't a deterrent.
I remember back in when a lot of us started back in that time, like late 80s, early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
The Lambic was sort of the holy grail of of homebrewing, really trying to do something that exotic. Most of us had never even tasted one.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to live near a couple good beer stores and have some really classic examples as well as some more modern examples. Kind of cut my teeth on Bone and Cantillon, and I drank a lot of the Lindemans as well, just because that was kind of the most commonly available one and the cheapest for a college student.
So what are some of the sour beers that folks might be most familiar with? What are some of the styles first? Let's start with that.
Lambic, like you mentioned, is the holy grail, and that's kind of been the one that has maybe captured our collective homebrewing imaginations for the longest. Flemish Reds and Flemish Browns are in that family as well. I think the kind of hot style these days are some of the northern German sour styles, like Berliner Weisse, of course,
sure.
And Gose is another one.
Gose has been coming on strong lately. A lot of people have been trying to brew Gose.
Yeah.
And what about commercial examples? What commercial examples do you enjoy?
I love a good Berliner Weisse.
Yeah.
I still love Lambic. I have a bunch of homebrewed and commercial examples in my dungeon back in the Midwest.
Underground lair.
In my underground lair, thank you. Yes, but my mom is not a beer drinker.
No.
She can't stand any type of beer. Guinness, stout, nitrogenated, fruit beers, anything like that. She can't hang, but she likes Berliner Weisse.
She likes the sour beer.
It's kind of like the one thing in terms of beer that she and I can bond on.
So really brewed it for your mom, that's what you're saying.
I brewed for myself, too, because I enjoy it a lot. It's just so quintessentially refreshing and delicious. But
that's awesome.
It's the one kind of beer my mom will drink.
Very cool.
I can serve her, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, there's obviously a bunch of different ways to make sour beer, most of which involve adding a bunch of bugs into the beer, using their fermentation.
Yep.
Let's start with sour mashing, though. I mean, that's one that a lot of people don't think of right off the bat.
Yeah.
But you can sour a mash and get sour beer.
Sure.
It generates lactic acid, right?
Yeah. So you've got to have some lactic acid bacteria to produce the lactic acid that makes those beers sour, whether it be Oud Bruin or Berliner Weisse or anything like that. And you've got species of Lactobacillus that will live on the husks of barley. So if you have a mash and don't boil it to kill the bacteria, they will, given enough time and warm enough temperatures, they'll make your mash sour.
So what's the walk us through the sour mashing technique, if you would.
Just in a nutshell, very simple. You would just bring your wort up to saccharification temperature, do a mash out, don't boil it. You can run off the wort right into a fermenter or a tank or what have you, and keep it hot. Basically,
just let it sit there.
These Lactobacillus like warm temperatures, 85, 90, on up into the low hundreds even. They'll work faster the warmer it is, and you can make some good acidity that way.
So you get you end up with a nice sour wort, right?
You'll end up with a sour wort. Just speaking as the brand manager for Weisse Labs, you should never use bacteria that live in the wild that you can get for free. You should buy the cultures.
Of course.
From Weisse Laboratories.
Well, yeah, because otherwise,
who knows what might happen. You can have. Just speaking personally, I've had variable results at home using sour mash techniques.
Yeah.
You can, and I know it works for some people, so I don't want to, just give a blanket reputation of it. And I've had some good examples. For me personally, it's I've never been able to kind of escape the trap of kind of some of the more funky vegetal flavors that are really unpleasant and stand out too strong for my mom and a Berliner Weisse.
For your mom, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about your mom, really.
It really is.
It really is all about
love your
Michael's
mother's
mom.
homebrewers.
Yeah.
Watch what you say about my mom, Brad.
I'm not saying anything I didn't say anything bad about your mom. Sounds like a great woman.
She likes Berliner Weisse.
Yeah.
Did I mention that?
You did mention that, actually. What I found is a lot of people that are brewing with sour mash, actually what they then do is take some of that wort that's soured and recombine it with a beer that they brewed earlier or something like that.
Sure.
I think that's a more successful technique. Wouldn't you think so?
Yeah. And it's once you have a quantity of sour wort, blending is a really powerful tool that you can use to do lots of different things with it and add complexity to other batches. And if you have a very mature sour beer that can tend to be quite acidic, if you've got a bug like Pediococcus working on it for a while, blending it with a younger beer is a nice shortcut to get a larger quantity of a nice sour beer faster.
Yeah, I think I probably most successfully use sour mashes with stouts, that kind of a thing. You take a little bit of sour and it just adds a little bit of twang to the stout.
Sure.
Gives it a little complexity. Kind of neat.
Yeah, I've done that too, and that's a good point to make, Brad, because in a style like a stout where you've got a lot of strong native flavors coming from the roasted grain and hops and whatnot, any of those vegetal flavors that you might pick up from a sour mash, if you're me, would be a lot less apparent than in one of those lighter northern German sour wheat beer styles.
So you're not going to make a Berliner Weisse or something like that using a sour mash, obviously. So the more common method, right, is using bugs, right?
Yeah, inoculating with a laboratory culture of a lactobacillus of some type, and there are lots of different species out there that you can play around with.
So what are the common ones that that Weisse has available?
So
for example?
The two that we have are a Buchneri, which is a classic from northern Germany. It's a Berliner Weisse Lactobacillus, and it's beautiful. It's just nice, clean, which is what my mom likes. I'm sorry, I keep...
No, it's all about your mom.
This style of beer is so fixed in my mind around her because it's what I can share with her that I brew. She won't drink anything else I make. That. So, but the crispness and cleanness and just kind of like brightness of a pure lacto culture is, I think, what is most attractive to a lot of people about a nice Berliner Weisse.
Okay, so that's one option. What are some of the other options you guys offer?
Brevis is another strain that we don't have in year-round production for home brewers, but we've released it seasonally.
Special release, yeah.
Yeah. So the main difference between our two versions of those strains is that the Brevis is more hop tolerant. The reason that styles like Berliner Weisse and Ghosts are not very hoppy is because Lactobacillus tends to be very sensitive to hops, and high hop levels will inhibit the activity of the lactic bacteria.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so that's one of the reasons hops became so widely used as a preservative, is because they will actually help prevent the spoiling of wort with lactic bacteria that's present.
That's kind of a problem.
In the barley.
If you want to spoil the beer, that's a problem.
That's why you need to make sure, especially if you're using the Buchneri or another hop-sensitive Lactobacillus strain, IBUs should be no more than you can count on one hand.
Oh, wow. So less than 10.
And
less than 5.
Yeah. 10 is kind of the ceiling that we recommend, 10 IBU for our Buchneri strain. Brevis can go a bit above that, but it's, you still probably wouldn't necessarily want to use it in an Imperial IPA or something with triple-digit IBUs. So 5 IBUs or less is ideal.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned earlier Pediococcus.
Yeah, that's a different species of lactic acid bacteria.
Right. Totally different.
Which, that's one that we see it more in the Lambics and the some of the Belgian sours, Flemish Reds, and Pediococcus is a really cool bacteria. It can produce a tremendous amount of acidity, and it's very potent, but it is slow and lazy. Compared to Lactobacillus, which can produce a great amount of acidity in 48 to 96 hours under the right conditions. Yeah. Given a high enough inoculation rate and warm enough temperatures, you can make a sour beer in days.
That's
with
awesome.
Lactobacillus. Pediococcus works in months rather than days.
Now, if I remember, the other popular option is Brett, right?
Yeah, and I definitely need to get to Brett in a minute. Brett's actually a yeast; it's not a bacteria, and it can produce some acid, but it's usually on its own not enough to produce what we would consider a really sour,
yeah.
Like pH in the 3 range.
It doesn't give you that really strong lactic acid flavor.
Yeah, if you want the true sourness, you'll need to use some lacto or some PDO. Yeah, and PDO
a lot of these are used in combination, right?
Well, I was just going to say it's true. The PDO can tend to produce a lot of diacetyl, which is another thing that differentiates it from Lactobacillus. And the reason that's nice is because Brett likes to consume diacetyl, so it's a good symbiosis. You've got the PDO, which is doing a very long, slow acidification of wort, and it's capable usually of producing a lower pH than a Lactobacillus, which is why the Lambics, especially the unblended or unfruited versions, and some of the Flemish Reds can tend to be a lot more aggressive in their sourness than the nice, gentle Berliners and Ghosts. But during the course of that really long souring, and the Pediococcus will tend to produce some kind of disgusting, ropey material, which, people who love brewing sour beers get really geeked on that.
Yeah.
And Milk the Funk is a really cool Facebook group that I belong to now. Milk the Funk, and it's a really good place for pellicle porn. There's great pictures that people post of their Brett and PDO and other fermentations. Yeah, but so all these byproducts that PDO tends to kick out can get metabolized by the Brett, which is beneficial, which then elevates the Brett character of the beer over the course of those long Lambic and Flemish sour ale fermentations.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you walk us through brewing a beer for your mom? What would that look like? I mean, you're brewing. You want the Berliner Weisse for your mom. Walk us through how do you brew it? What does the recipe look like? How do you when do you add the bugs?
Sure.
And how do you age it out?
Sure. So Berliner Weisse is it's beautiful in its simplicity. About 50% wheat malt, 50% Pils malt, and my preference is kind of for the classic ABV range of right around 3%,
right,
or maybe even just a little bit south. So you're only looking for 7 to 8 Plato original gravity, 1028 to 1032 roughly.
Pretty low, yeah.
Very low. Schank beer, I think, is what it's classified as. In Germany. So very simple grist. I typically don't do a really complicated mash for that. When I'm doing it home, just a single infusion. And then I do boil it, just a very brief boil. No hops.
Okay. No hops at all?
At this point.
Okay, you add them later.
And then, maybe boil the wort for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, enough to volatilize some of the DMS from the Pils malt. And kind of clean that up a little bit and cool it down, but only to about 100 Fahrenheit, 95 or 100 warm, Fahrenheit. And then for a 5-gallon batch, I'll use a 1-liter starter of Lactobacillus.
So are you doing 100% Lactobacillus? You're not adding any regular yeast?
Well, this I've done it a few different ways. You can either co-inoculate your Saccharomyces and your Lactobacillus and whatever else you might use. Some Berliner Weisse formulations use a little bit of Brett as well. But I think most people prefer kind of the cleaner, more approachable version that's just
100%
lacto and sac.
Okay.
Yep. And so we'll do the Lactobacillus first. This is the other option, either co-inoculation or staggered. And so if I'm in a hurry, I'll do the Lactobacillus first. And so, like I said, you cool the wort after a very brief boil down to about 100 Fahrenheit, give or take. Inoculate with about a liter of Lactobacillus starter, and that is the starter is prepared pretty much the same way we ferment the main wort, which will be at that 95 to 100 Fahrenheit for 2 to 4 days, basically.
You're keeping it warm the whole time.
Keep it warm the whole time. And
how do you keep something like that warm for that long?
A heating blanket is a good option.
Probably the easiest way.
Yeah, and kind of the most controllable and repeatable, which I'm a fan of. I have crazy friends who will just stick a fermenter out in the garage in the middle of summer, which is an option. But you got to be careful because Lactobacillus, it's thermophilic. It loves the heat, but too much, just like any other microbe or living organism, too much heat will kill it. And you want to keep it below. Definitely below about 120. I personally try not to go over 105, give or take. But
so how long? So you're going to keep it warm then your fermentation.
Yep.
How long do you ferment it out for?
Like 2 to 4 days. It's dependent a lot on the inoculation rate and temperature. The warmer it is, and the more bacteria you use, the faster you will achieve that sourness.
Is that going to bring the gravity down?
It depends a lot on the strain. There's a lot of diversity within the Lactobacillus. Our cultures at Yeast are moderately heterofermentive. So there will be a little bit of alcohol production, not a ton. Should be less than a 10% change in SG during the course of that, but it will kick out a lot of lactic acid, and we'll see the pH drop. And sensory is what I usually tell folks is kind of the best.
Taste it. The
best gauge of that. You won't see a krausen, you won't see a ton of bubbling in the airlock while this is happening. It's going to be pretty quiet and unspectacular visually, but you'll be able to taste it. Right.
Awesome.
So absent a pH meter, just thief a sample and taste it. And when it's to your liking, it's time to do the second inoculation with Saccharomyces. So what I'll do is reboil it to knock out the Lactobacillus. That's an optional step. It's kind of nice if you want to, if you're paranoid about transmitting lacto to any other vessels or beers or serving lines. So it's just a precaution. It's just a brief boil.
And so we should mention that it's a good idea to keep your equipment separate, right, when you're working with a lot of these bugs?
That's, I think it's kind of best practice to have a separate set for any kind of porous brewing equipment,
especially plastics,
tubing.
Things like that,
Yeah. I have a dedicated set of O-rings and tap lines that I use for my kegs when I keg sour beers. Having said that, Brett is a yeast, just like Saccharomyces, and PDO and lacto are bacteria, and they're microbes, and they can be killed with good sanitizing techniques. So, if you have a good cleansing and sanitizing regimen, separate equipment is a good extra insurance, but you can take steps in preventing cross-contamination.
Okay, so you've fermented for several days. You've boiled it now to get rid of the lacto, kill off the lacto.
If we want to add any hops to our Berliner Weisse, this is when we would add them.
So you add them during that boil.
Just a very short boil, and just if you just want to show the wort a picture of a hop, not even actually put any cones in, you can just show it a picture of
wave them over the top of the boil pot.
Waft the aroma in.
Yeah.
You don't need a lot of IBUs. You can put some in if you want, but it's not
less than 5.
Less than 5 is a good rule of thumb. And very brief boil, hop if you want, but keep the IBUs low. Just at this point, it's for style more than inhibiting the lacto. And cool it down, and then add a nice Northern German style ale yeast.
So now you're actually going to ferment it.
Yep. This would be the alcoholic fermentation versus the lactic fermentation.
Nice. Yeah, I know a lot of people go the other way. They'll ferment first and then add the bacteria, but
you can do that as well.
Yeah.
This is kind of my speedier shortcut, quick souring. There's not really a right or wrong way to do it. Like you mentioned, Brad, you can do the alcoholic fermentation first, add Saccharomyces, and then add the lacto after, and that'll definitely work. You'll get a nice lactic sourness. It's going to take longer.
Right.
You won't be able to turn the beer around in a matter of days. It'll probably be weeks or months.
Yeah, I know. It takes a long time, some of these sour beers.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So I didn't know about that shortcut.
Yeah.
So you fermented out for how long now? Once you've added the yeast back in?
With an SG of 7 to 8 Plato, 1028, 1032, give or take. It's going to be a very fast fermentation.
Right.
And you've already got your lactic sourness built in. It's nice and tart. As soon as the beer is fermented and bright and dropped clear, you can proceed with packaging with that.
So you're ready to go?
Yeah.
Ready for your mom to drink it, right?
And it's very nice if you've got the Woodruff syrup, or make a raspberry simple syrup. This kind of recipe takes fruit really well.
So do you put a little syrup in at the end, or you like extract? What's your secret there?
Add it to the glass if you're doing syrups, and mix it to taste when you serve. If you want to add fruit and do a secondary fermentation on whole raspberries or peaches or rhubarb or what have you, it's the sourness of these nice light summery beers blends very well with that.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, that's really cool. So how long does it take end to end for to make a nice Berliner Weisse here?
Oh, well, the short end, I would say 2 weeks.
Wow, that's really fast for sour beer.
Well, if you do that kind of shortcut of lacto fermentation first, the bacteria has the advantage of kind of a pristine environment in the fermenter, if you will. It's got access to tons of nutrients, lots of sugar to eat. There's no alcohol to inhibit it.
Right.
You're kind of giving it a head start.
That's awesome.
And at the long end, co-inoculation or adding lacto after the sack, those are both totally valid and probably more historical, in some cases, techniques of how it would have been done. The lacto will work slower, and you will arrive at another nice sour beer, another good result that way. It'll just take longer, and you have to be more patient.
Cool. Well, let's. Can you walk us through another style? I don't know if you want to do Lambic or if you want to do a Flanders or something like that.
Let's talk about Lambic. It's one of my first
Lambic's
loves.
The holy grail, man.
Yeah. So
you pull it off.
Yeah, it's a really complex system of different microbes working together in symbiosis. Like the classic.
So let's start. Describe what a lambic is.
Yeah,
so
it's another wheat-based ale,
right?
And it's native to the Pajottenland region of Belgium, and it was it was kind of this historic. I think what I found so compelling about it back when I was getting started, and maybe it was the same for you, Brad, is that it's like this very antiquated dinosaur of a style that survived all of these 19th and 20th century modernizations of the brewing industry and resisted.
And they never changed anything.
It resisted all of these innovations, I guess, of single culture fermentation and more streamlined mashing techniques and everything like that. Everything about it was involved and archaic and
very
weird
time-consuming
and kind of stupid. And I think that's what I found so compelling about it. And there were
stupid
definitely
is compelling. So.
There are easier ways to get a beer than by brewing it Lambic style, but none of us got into homebrewing to do anything easy, right? You can go to the store and buy a beer, but we're all doing this because we find the process compelling. And so it's a very, traditionally involved mash system that uses a lot of...
Walk us through brewing one, if you would.
Yeah, so a lot of raw wheat and oats, a little bit of Pilsner malt, very kind of rustic and agrarian grain bill, an intensive... sort of like a proto-decoction mash that would result in a lot of dextrins for the Brett and various microbes to consume over the course of a long fermentation. After this lengthy mashing process and boiling, the wort would be knocked out into a cool ship, big shallow vessel, which are kind of enjoying a renaissance now, which is interesting. And
it's an open vessel, isn't it?
It's a big open shallow vessel that will allow the wort to cool pretty quickly just by a surface area and evaporation. And as it cooled, it was allowed to be inoculated with all of these microbes,
local bugs
that were resident to the Peyottenland area and resident to their respective breweries. And so you'd have spontaneous fermentation from incidental contact with whatever was in the air and whatever was in taking up residence in the brewery vessels.
So a combination of wild yeast plus wild bugs.
Yeah, so right? Saccharomyces, Brettanomyces, Lactobacillus, Pediococcus. Sometimes you'll find some enteric bacteria in there, which is responsible for the funky fecal diaper pail smell, which was also, just like a huge... I think that was kind of like the first, you're not worthy, you probably won't like this beer kind of moment. It's like, this beer is too poopy for you to like, and I'm hardcore because I enjoy it.
It is distinctive.
It was a point of pride, at a low enough levels, it's distinctive. It's another adjective at higher levels. But so all of these microbes would work, it was a mixed culture. They would work in symbiosis, and it was kind of like a symphony where, one would start out and then kind of fade out, and another one pick up, and after the Saccharomyces was done, the Brett would begin this very long, slow piece. And the Pediococcus
extensive fermentation, if I recall.
12 to 18 months plus.
They didn't leave them in the cool ship the whole time.
No,
right?
after the beers were cooled in the cool ship, then they would have been inoculated with airborne bacteria and airborne yeast. They'd be put in oak casks that were probably full of Brett and the pedio and who knows what else. And so over a period of months and seasons with varying temperatures in the cellar, these microbes would slowly work and convert alcohol and produce diacetyl and reduce it and produce lactic acid and all of the phenols and other crazy flavors that Brett can produce until you had this really crazy wild ale.
Now, a lot of them at the end were blended too, weren't they?
Yeah, so different vintages I mentioned before, like if you have an old sour beer that's quite aggressively acidic, blending it with a younger, less interesting, less funky beer is a good way to make something greater than the sum of its parts. Fruit was another really common addition. There's a lot of cherries grown in Belgium, so Kriek and Framboise with raspberries were traditional. And now you can see some really interesting combinations out there, stuff that would never have occurred had Lambic stayed within the borders of.
I'm trying to remember, don't they use stale
Belgium.
hops on a lot of these too?
Yeah, again,
They
you know,
actually
that's
pick hops that have been staled.
yeah. Aged hops. I know there are some shops that sell these specifically to homebrewers for making Lambic. Again, it's the various hop acids and oils that can inhibit the lactobacillus and result in a less sour beer. So, thank you for reminding me. I forgot all about the aged hops and Lambic.
So how would a homebrewer do something like this?
You gotta first get some hops. You gotta plan ahead, get some hops, leave them up in your attic, unrefrigerated, let them get past cheesy, past stinky, get some old hops, or just use a very low hop rate. I have done the traditional turbid mashing, and even though I'm a fan of decoction and I'm a fan of lost causes and 18-hour smoking, turbid mashing is it's a bridge too far for me. It's a little too much. I feel like in a beer
describe what turbid mashing is for folks that may not.
So it's like a decoction mash, but even more involved and intense, where you go through a series of rests, very dilute mash, a lot of raw ingredients, raw grains that need to be broken down. I feel like for a beer that's
everything that you're not supposed to do, really.
Everything that you're not supposed to do.
Kind of mix the mash up a lot, and
it's awesome. It's bless you if you want to go out and try it and do it. That's terrific. But I feel like for a style that is so fermentation forward, and where you really want to make it count in the fermentation with the bugs that you're using and using to coax out all those flavors and create that complexity, you can do that without spending an entire day producing the wort. You can do a much simpler mash with modern grains, still mash kind of high with modern malts and get a good dextrin profile for that long, slow fermentation.
Okay, so we've gone through. You got your basic grain bill. You've gone through mashing it. Now, how do you inoculate it?
Well, you've got kind of the same choices with Lambic that we talked about before with Berliner Weisse, Brad. You can co-inoculate with everything, and that's really nice, simple, all-in-one pitch.
Which is kind of what they do in Belgium, right?
It's essentially what they do in Belgium. There's exposure to all of those microbes at a young age, and then they just kind of over the course of years, or at least months, slowly work and make something beautiful together. You can also inoculate separately, which is kind of the strategy I was describing with the Berliner Weisse, where you can tailor the conditions of the fermentation to each individual microbe during the phase at which it's working.
So what order would you recommend? For example, I mean, a lot about yeast. So.
Just it's going to be an extension of what we described with the Berliner Weisse. Different wort, different end result, but same kind of strategy. You'd want to do your lactobacillus first for acidity. If you were going to do that, you could forego the lacto if you really wanted to and just rely on PDO over the course of a long time to create.
That's going to take a lot longer, right?
It's just going to work slower than the lacto, but if you're brewing a Lambic, you shouldn't be in a rush anyway, right?
That's true.
So lacto, then your Saccharomyces, and once the alcoholic fermentation is complete, you can rack it, you can not rack it. The original Lambic would have been in an oak cask, just sitting on the lees, which is, again, as those cells break down, it's going to make an awful autolyzed flavor in the beer, but we're not drinking it young, and over time, all those autolyzed cells and remnants of the yeast and lactic bacteria will just become food and fuel for the Brettanomyces over the course of its fermentation. So after the sack, rack or don't rack, and then inoculate it with Brettanomyces and Pediococcus and
and then finally the actual yeast, right?
Saccharomyces. That would be the second thing.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
And then if you're using fruit in your Lambic, when would you do that? What would you recommend?
I like to let it finish. I like to have a finished Brettanomyces profile. I like the PDO to be done, have it finished so what kind of beer you're working with, how it turned out, because it's kind of like Raku pottery. It's going to be a little bit different and a little bit unanticipatable every time.
Yeah.
So let the fermentation finish. It's going to take you 18 months, maybe 2 years. But once you have that, then taste it. Oh, would this be good with cherries? Would this be good with raspberries? Is it really awesome by itself? And don't want to put any fruit in it.
Wow.
But so the fruit can go in after the rest is done.
So and then, I mean, do you brew like one of these every year or two, and then blend them together, or what do you do?
When I can, yeah. I don't get to brew as much as I used to anymore, and I'm really bummed about it. But I need to fix that. I did a sour last winter with the previous year's harvest of Chernaya Lisovinko black currants. It's a Russian variety that my cousin grows on her farm. They're great, and this is like a really nasty, aggressive, hardcore, tart blackberry variety or black currant. Excuse me. It's a varietal from Russia that my cousin grows on her farm, and it makes a very nice. It's when you couple it with oak, it's almost like a Cabernet. It's got a lot of blackberry, cassis kind of quality, and then compare it with some oak, and then it's got a pretty pronounced acidic punch from PDO.
Cracked that one open already?
I actually have that in a keg, which is kind of dangerous. I try not to let myself near it too much because it's almost gone.
Came out pretty good, yeah. It'll hit peak just as a keg hits empty, right?
Yeah, that's
what usually happens.
The rule of home brewing.
Well, do you have other advice for fermenting, or creating good sour beers?
There's never been a better time to be a home brewer making sour beers than there is right now, because the variety of cultures available and the resources, like the Facebook group I mentioned before, is a wealth of knowledge. I feel very privileged to have been invited to join it earlier this year. The American Sour Beers book was just published by
Michael, I think.
Michael Tonsmeyer, yeah. When you and I were starting, Brad, there was none of this, and it was kind of...
We had Charlie's book, I think was the only one,
Yeah, and there was not a lot of resources. There wasn't a lot of different ingredients to choose from, and now there's... Besides the resources, there's also this proliferation of really amazing commercial examples.
Yeah, there are some nice beers coming out.
For inspiration and ideas, and the brewers are often very generous and open source with their knowledge.
Well, Michael, is there anything else you want to add regards to brewing a sour? Any thoughts?
I think everybody should try it at least once.
Try it at least once.
It's a lot of fun, and my mom would like it.
Your mom would like it.
My mom would like it.
That really says it all.
Honestly, you guys should really be brewing not to please yourselves, but do something
to please your mom,
Mrs. Dawson would like.
Yeah. I appreciate that. You've transitioned over to Weisse. A couple of years ago, I think it was.
Yeah.
And of course, they're one of the two major providers here in the country. I was wondering if you want to take a minute and talk about some of the new stuff going on at Weisse.
It's not exactly sour, but it is funky. So I guess it falls under this aegis, Brad. We've got a brand new blend coming out in July, and we've got the cards over at our booth, which have the specs and profile on it. It's a Saison Brett blend.
Oh, nice.
Which is a blend of a couple Saison strains and Brettanomyces for kind of new school American style farmhouse beers. And it's for homebrewers, like having everything in that all-in-one pitch, it's kind of nice.
So you kind of throw it all in at once, not have to worry about staging it.
You don't have to worry about staging it, so that's handy. Yeah. So that'll be coming out in July. It'll be available through September. We actually have never had it in homebrew packaging before. We sneak previewed it at the Craft Brewers Conference a couple months ago in April, and had really good feedback from brewers on it. So we're eager to hear what homebrewers make of it and how it goes for them.
And you guys do seasonals. I mean,
we do.
What are some of the ones you do?
Constantly?
Or been done recently?
It's been a long night, Brad, and now you're catching me off.
No, it's okay, man. It's all good.
We're gonna have a couple other Saison strains out, some old crowd favorites coming back in July.
Awesome.
And the 3725 and 3726. I get a lot of emails about both of those, so people will be happy. The current seasonals because it's been such a late night bread, and we're at the NHC, and
it's all good. Man.
I can't remember what they are, and they're only available for a couple more weeks, but they are online at yeastlab.com.
Have you got any?
That's where everything that I can't remember lives.
Is there anything else you wanted to add, though? Anything else you want to add regarding Yeast or anything you're doing?
We're really happy to be here at the NHC, and I'm thrilled to finally make it on your podcast.
Yeah,
I know we've been trying for a long time, but we're like ships in the night.
Over a year now.
A couple handsome
I'm glad
ships.
to have you, Michael. You've been a great guest.
I'm glad to be here. I hope we can do it again soon.
Well, thanks again, Michael. Really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Brad. It was a lot of fun.
And thanks again to Michael Dawson for joining me from Yeast Labs here at the National Homebrew Conference from the BeerSmith booth. Michael's well-known brewing author, brand manager for Yeast, and former co-host at Brewing TV. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thanks again to Michael Dawson for joining me on the National Homebrew Conference show floor. Thanks also to Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, where you can get your 15% discount on their magazine or anything in their store if you use the offer code BeerSmith2015 when you shop at beerandbrewing.com. Again, use the offer code BeerSmith2015 and get your subscription now at beerandbrewing.com. Finally, give BeerSmith mobile app a try. It lets you edit beer recipes on the go. Check it out today on iTunes, Google Play, or the Kindle Fire store. You can also learn more at beersmith.com/mobile. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a great brewing week.